Welcome to Group 14, Case 17A, which is Secondary Analysis and Descriptive Epidemiology of Asthma. Asthma is triggered by several endogenous and exogenous factors. Some of these triggers include plants, animals, weather, acute illness, food, emotions, medications, and even the menstrual cycle. According to the National Health Interview Survey in 2011, an estimated 39 million people, including 10 million children in the United States, had been diagnosed with asthma in their lifetime. Of the 39 million, 18 million adults and 7 million children still have asthma. Current asthma prevalence for the year 2011 was higher among females compared with males for all ages above 18 years, but male children younger than 18 had higher prevalence compared to the females. And when compared with white, Hispanic, and other races, blacks had the highest current asthma prevalence. Also of note, Puerto Ricans had the highest current prevalence as compared to any other population, with 16.7%. The Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System is an epidemiological survey system which was established by the CDC in 1991. Its purpose is to monitor the prevalence of youth behavior that have the most influential impact on adolescent health. The YRBSS was created to aid the monitoring of behaviors that place adolescents at increased risk for premature mortality and morbidity as well as social problems. The YRBSS system is responsible for monitoring 6 areas of health and risk behavior, which are the main causes of death, disability, and social problems among youth and young adults, namely alcohol and other drugs, tobacco use, physical activity, just to name a few. The YRBSS is also responsible for monitoring 2 health outcomes, namely obesity and asthma. The purpose is to detail health risk behaviors among 9th through 12th grade adolescents and monitor trends in the data to make more informed decision-based assessments which have an impact on community interventions at the national, state, and local level. The survey is conducted every 2 years and has been administered through the school-based network since its inception in 1991. The data collection method typically used for the YRBSS is a self-administered questionnaire the students are asked to complete during a regularly scheduled class period. The survey administered to high school and middle school students includes 2 types of questions directed specifically toward asthma, which are ever been told by a doctor or nurse that they have asthma, or ever been told by a doctor or nurse that they have asthma and still have asthma. This graph, derived from data obtained from the CDC website, shows a rising prevalence of asthma among high school students in the United States between 2005 and 2011. You'll notice that males have a slightly higher prevalence of asthma compared to girls. And this lifetime prevalence of asthma was measured using the question, has a doctor or nurse ever told you that you have asthma? The YRBS survey is administered to middle school and high school students, but for the purposes of this study, we are primarily focusing on data for high school students only. Asians and Hispanics maintain the lowest prevalence of all the races. Native Americans, African Americans, and whites all showed a dip in 2005. Possible explanations could be lower participation rates of youth from these racial backgrounds in that year compared to the other races, or issues with data collection procedures. The most interesting trend in the figure is that shown by the American Indian Alaskan natives. They had an unusual surge in a year when others had a drop. Again, this could have been due to oversampling of Alaskan youth. Analysis of the results by high school grades showed a similar pattern of increasing prevalence across grade levels, except for a slight dip in 2005. This figure shows an increasing trend of lifetime prevalence of asthma for high school students of all grades in 2011. The current prevalence of asthma in youth was measured by the YRBS questionnaire using the question, has a doctor or nurse ever told you that you have asthma, and do you still have asthma? Now, comparing the lifetime prevalence with current prevalence using the figures, it is clear that although current prevalence is increasing, it is doing so at a lower rate than lifetime prevalence. From the YRBS survey of 2007, there was no data available for Native Hawaiians or those marked as other, and it's therefore important to interpret the information in this figure with caution. Now, the differences in the lifetime and current prevalence could suggest either an overdiagnosis of asthma when the youth were younger, the use of different criteria to define asthma by the different health professionals, or the fact that the youth were simply outgrowing their asthma. The figure shows that the lifetime prevalence of asthma among white students is presented by state, and it shows that compared with the data on all race ethnic groups, there are more states with an asthma prevalence of less than 20%. The map shows the lifetime prevalence of asthma among white high school students in the U.S. The blue states are those for which there were no YRBS data for that year, and the white states are those which simply did not participate in the survey. This map shows the lifetime asthma prevalence for black high school students. Although data was available for only 18 states, Kentucky and Maryland show a very high prevalence of 37% and 33% respectively, and are color-coded in red. Although it is not clear from the data why this is so, a plausible explanation could be a larger proportion of black students in these states compared to others. Most of the states with a prevalence of between 25 and 30% on the southern U.S. For the states colored gray, the data is marked as not available on the CDC website because there were less than 100 respondents for the subgroup, making them too few to include in the analysis. Only the state of Kansas had a prevalence of less than 20% compared to the map for white students. On both maps, Georgia and Maine had prevalence rates of between 25 and 30%. After the statistical tests, we found that black high school students are more likely to report lifetime prevalence of asthma as compared to white, with an odds ratio of 1.24 and a p-value of 0.02. Though the statistical tool provided by the CDC website does not specify the test used, we suppose it to be a chi-square test. This paper has identified black high school students in the U.S. to be high-risk population for asthma. The exact reason why this is so is not known. In Miller 2000 found that parents' lifetime income and socio-demographic characteristics were insufficient to explain the high prevalence of asthma among black children. Exposure to secondhand smoke, poor housing, and dust mites are all plausible reasons. There were several limitations to our study. Our inability to access the raw data from the CDC website limited our analysis. The software we used to generate the maps were a free online tool that limited our ability to create legends that were self-explanatory. Therefore, we had to define some of the color codes in the text of the report. Because of the multifactorial etiology of asthma, black high school students could benefit from further research in the areas of genetics of allergies and asthma. However, until more evidence on gene-environment interactions related to asthma become available, Control of known environmental risk factors such as pollen mold cigarettes among black children and youth remain the best approach to combating childhood asthma.